Hi everyone and welcome to another painting tutorial. So today I'm going to take you through how I painted the power sword you might have seen on my Instagram page. I had a lot of positive feedback on this one and very excited to share it with you today. So I am going to be replicating the one that you may have seen on Instagram on a different power sword. So over a Mechanicus standard grey undercoat, I'm going to begin just doing a nice muted orange, that being SQUIG orange by CITADEL, just at the base of the power sword and around the power node. Now you notice as well I'm using my wet palette and the paint is relatively watered down, and the most important thing with this power sword scheme is to be as patient as you possibly can, as we will need to layer quite a few times with each colour. Now I did decide to choose Mechanicus Standard Grey as the colour finish between each coat isn't going to be as transparent as it would be over Chaos Black, for example, and I thought that white undercoat would just be a little bit too bright, so again just decided to go with the Mechanicus Standard Grey. Now for the centre of the blade I'm just going to use some MEPHISTON red, and again as you can see quite watered down, and just very gradually going to be building up at the centre. And I would say no more than approximately a centimetre for the MEPHISTON red. And now for the top of the blade I'm just going to be using KANTOR blue. Now we will be blending these colours slightly, just where the colours meet. And now just going back to SQUIG orange, I'm just going to do an additional layer just down the bottom of the blade. Now once again, just going back to MEPHISTON red, just working through that center. And very quickly just washing off my brush, adding a little bit more water to the KANTOR blue, and once again just working through that center to help blend the red and the blue. And then just getting a little bit more KANTOR blue and once again working up the top of the blade. Now it's important to note as well, as you can see, immediately after applying the MEPHISTON red, I've jumped straight back to the SQUIG orange, just to help blend in those colors. Now don't stress too much if you don't get the blended colors perfect, as the additional details coming up in the latter part of the tutorial will be overlapping a lot of this. However, it is good practice to try and get it as close to perfect as you can. But again, don't be hard on yourself if you don't get it right the first time. And as you can see now, I've just been waiting a moment for the paint to dry a little bit. However, I did want to keep within a reasonable time for this tutorial, so trying to move on to each progressive highlight as quickly as I can. And as you can see there with the Kantor blue, just the smallest amount of paint on my brush. Once again, just working in that blended color. And now just doing the same thing at the bottom, except with MEPHISTON red into the SQUIG orange. And then very quickly just getting the SQUIG orange onto my brush and doing an additional blend. And just to mention as well, as you'll soon see, the muted orange, that being SQUIG orange, ultimately was a really good choice, as it's made a really good foundation for the more vibrant oranges to come. And as you can see with that additional layer of Kantor blue, I've just worked a little bit further up from the blend between the red and the blue. And now just to add a darker shade at the top of the blade, I'm just going to lightly shade on some ABADDON black. Now once again, it is relatively watered down. And I don't want it to be completely like solid black. So again, adding a decent amount of water of this and only really layering it once or twice. And once again, just going back to the Kantor blue and just gradually working that through the top center of the blade there, and very gradually into the ABADDON black as well. And as you can see, all of the base colors are now dry. So I'm now going to move on to all of the highlight colors, starting with TROLLSLAYER orange. And again, having the paints relatively watered down. And initially just working through the bottom center of the power sword. And as you can see, very small amounts of paint on my brush and constantly moving the paint downward, as I certainly don't want to allow for any patchy finishes. So very, very gradually just working that color down, as you can see. Allow just a little bit of time between each coat to dry, preferably longer than what I'm showing in this video. However, again, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't want the video to drag out for too long. Now, as you can see, I removed most of the paint on the palette, however just additionally on my finger as well, as I got a closer look to the brush, there was just a little bit too much paint on the brush, as it's really important for this step to make sure that we don't allow any colour to overlap into the blue. So just gradually building up some edge highlighting. And as you can see, it is a very subtle highlight, however we will be layering this a few times. And as you can see here, just the importance of not overloading your brush. It is much, much better with details such as this just to have a very small amount of paint on the brush and just gradually layer it up as opposed to overloading the brush and it bleeding off into the other details, and then of course having to go back and fix it is certainly going to be a lot more time consuming. And now just around the power node, I'm just going to gradually build in just with the stippling technique and gradually just working that paint down again. And once again, just going back to the center of the power node and building up that effect just a slightly more. And gradually working my way further out of the power node. And also going to be adding some very, very fine lines of a sort of lightning effect would be the easiest description. And again, just ensuring that you do have that good, nice, thin paint consistency and a very, very small amount of paint on the brush. And I should mention as well, the brush that I have been using is my YRIEL 8404 size 3-0 brush for this. And as you can see, I have just jumped back to the TROLLSLAYER orange once again and just gradually building up over the muted orange a little bit more, as I'm really going for that sort of glowing, sort of searing heat sort of look. And now just up through the center highlight of the blade that we've already done some work on here. I'm now just going to make it look as though the energy of the searing heat of the bottom of the blade is working its way up to the tip of the blade. At which point the tip of the blade, along with the power node, will have the sort of hottest appearance. And as you can see as well, it did take quite a few layers. I think we did 3 in total there. But you can see the edge highlights of the blade are really coming together now. Now at this point, there was one color that I forgot to add to the palette. So I'm just adding the YRIEL yellow now. However, we are going to be going to Fire Dragon Bright next to continue working up those highlights. And as you can see as well, I did add some additional water to the mix for the Fire Dragon Bright, and really just working as close to the power node as I can initially. And also just highlighting through the power source through the center of the blade. And of course the very tip of the blade as well. As you can see there, just leaving a very, very faint line of the TROLLSLAYER orange visible, just to ensure that we keep that sort of glowing effect that we're going for here. And I decided to go back to TROLLSLAYER orange here just to add a little bit more energy coming from the power node, as I just felt as though there wasn't really enough there. But yeah, this is the beauty of having a wet palette, being able to jump back and forth between colors, go back and add a little bit more, take away a little bit of color if you weren't happy with it. And also just working back those edge highlights with the Fire Dragon Bright. And just using the brush to my advantage, working it at an angle there. Again, small amount of paint on the brush. Just really take your time with these steps. So again, just some stippling through the center part of the power field there, just near the power node, and very, very carefully just adding some small lines. Again, just sort of in the same style as you would paint lightning effects on power swords. And now moving on to YRIEL yellow. So for the most part, really just following over the Fire Dragon Bright. And just the very tip of the sword there as well. So just both sides of the sword and through the top center of the sword. And as you can see, just adding some YRIEL yellow through the center power nodes again. And now moving on to Sand Yellow by Vallejo. So this is from the model color range. A really wonderful color. It actually took me a little while to use this one, but I'm really glad that I did purchase it, as it was really, really useful for these sort of, you know, OSL, really vibrant sort of fiery effects. So again, really just using this one sparingly. So just on the power nodes there, just to make them stand out that much more. And just through that center power node. And now as an absolute final touch, I'm just going to use some white scar. However, any white acrylic paint will do just fine. So just a little bit on the tip of the power node there. And then just at the lower center of the blade where we've done those sort of lightning effects. And just on the tip of the blade as well. And also just a little bit through the center of the power nodes. And really just try and center the white dots dead center of the additional colors that we had done prior to the white. And here is the completed sword. Now I will have some photos coming up of the original sword that you might have seen on my Instagram page. So here's the completed miniature and how it looks. I was really, really happy with how it all came together. Thank you again for all the feedback on this sword. I will definitely be doing more power swords in the future. So thank you very much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button as it really helps me out. I will see you in the next one.